Brooke has told us this. Mike Tomlin doesn't like to play you lose your starting job because of injury. And it's not like the Steelers are relying on the forward pass all that much. It's not a ton of yards. It's less than 200 yards passing per game, less than 20 completions per game. They're not throwing it a ton, only 25 attempts per game. But the way Mike Tomlin sees it, 3-0 is 3-0. They have a 3-game lead on the Bengals in that division. Only one, though, over the 2-1 Ravens. Joining us on the Adam Gold Show, Brooke Pryor covers the Steelers for ESPN. I just said you're going to be on SportsCenter coming up at the top of the hour, so we won't keep you that long. 3-0. I mean, again, it wasn't about the offense, but at least they scored 2 touchdowns, which is one more than they had scored through the first 2 weeks combined.
Right. I mean, they increased their scoring by 100%. I'm not great at math, but whatever it is, it's a lot. And
right.
They could have scored a third. Najee Harris broke off that long run right there at the end of the game and got tackled just short of the goal line, and it kind of looked like he wanted to score. But, it's funny when you rattle off those stats about, less than 200 yards passing a game, less than 25 attempts, less than 20 completions. Justin Fields was beyond all of that. On Sunday, he had 245 passing yards, 25 of 32, a touchdown passing, a touchdown rushing. He had an interception that was kind of fluky, but still he, I think, stretched the ball more down the field, got a lot of yak from guys like Calvin Austin, who had that 55-yard touchdown. He was, I think, just really smart with the ball and knew when to make the right plays, and he didn't scramble that much either. That's kind of the crazy thing. I think he's just playing very smart football, and when you have a defense that holds the other team to -5 yards in the second half, all you need is a smart quarterback, and good things will happen.
Yeah, the Mike Tomlin, the Steelers formula is, let's not screw this up. Let's lean on our defense, which is elite. We have a good kicker. They've got, 9 field goals through 3 weeks of the season. So all of these things are in place. And is Mike Tomlin in any way, shape, or form still playing the Russell Wilson is our starting quarterback game?
Oh, that's his favorite game to play. In fact, we just got out of the press conference where he was asked straight up, Justin has played well through the first 3 weeks. Why not name him the starter going forward? And Mike Tomlin said, because it's not time to make that decision. And he reiterated what he said last week, that until Russell Wilson is healthy, he is not going to make a decision or change his mind regarding the pecking order, which is why when the depth chart comes out week after week, it's still Russell Wilson QB1 and then Justin Fields QB2. And, it makes sense. You want to keep Russell Wilson engaged and, still, believing in the process, still being as involved as he is, still feeling like he has a shot that when he's healthy, he will be able to be QB1 because Mike Tomlin doesn't let his guys get Wally Pitts necessarily. But, I asked him, what does that reasonable, appropriate amount of healthy look like? And Tomlin said, we'll know it when we see it. But essentially, he has to be able to go through a full practice and do what he needs to do to win. And so far, Russell Wilson hasn't been able to do those things. So it's Justin Fields.
So does Mike Tomlin walk past Russell Wilson every day and just kind of kick him in the back of the leg, in the calf?
Not that I am aware of. I have not witnessed that interaction. I think that, it's always better to have 2 healthy quarterbacks or 3 healthy quarterbacks in this case than 2. So, you want Russell Wilson to be healthy, but, it's going to be really hard to take Justin Fields off the field because of the momentum that this team has and because of how all the guys are responding to Justin Fields. They all are really buying into him as a leader because he's so calm, he's so steady. He very much, though he's a young guy, he has a veteran presence and he has this aura that you just want to follow him.
That just speaks to how it is when you play for the Chicago Bears. You age in dog years. So every year is like 5. He's ready to retire. But Fields has done exactly what the Steelers have basically wanted him to do, is we keep the chains moving for the most part, and we don't screw it up. And as long as you could do that and lean on those elements we talked about earlier, things will be fine. So Brooke Pryor, who covers the Steelers for ESPN, I am curious about the way you look at what has gone on in Cincinnati. We're not blaming Joe Burrow, although week one I thought, man, he doesn't look healthy. But we're not blaming Joe Burrow for 0-3. But they are 0-3. And they have to be in full-blown panic mode in Cincinnati.
It's not great because it's not necessarily just Joe Burrow in this offense. I mean, I was concerned about the wrist. That seems to not be as big of an issue. But that defense, man, you can't go out there talking about Cliff Kingsbury running a college offense and then get torched like that. And on the flip side of that, I think it was Jamar Chase or somebody a couple weeks ago, I believe, was trash talking, doing a little, giving the team some poster board material before the game. I just keep looking at the Bengals and keep thinking, like, you guys need to be quiet and just play. I feel like every single week I'm seeing something that's come out of this locker room that is then feeding into the game, and then you're on the losing end of it. I mean, it is a concern. I think that it's just their defense can't seem to get a stop. And yes, Jaden Daniels is really good, but he's a rookie. You know, he shouldn't have been able to just absolutely light up this Bengals defense in prime time. Granted, they're dealing with a lot of injuries on the defensive line, on the offensive line, but it's I am more concerned about the Bengals now than I was after their week one loss, knowing that they are a team that is slow to get started most seasons, but it lingering like this for 3 weeks in the AFC North, too, that's a hard division to try to dig yourself out of.
Yeah, more problematic for Cincinnati. And I don't mean to disparage the Steelers at all. They're 3-0, but I still think they're probably a 10-win team. I think the Ravens are probably closer to a 12-win team. They're 2-1, and by the way, Buffalo will be in Baltimore coming up on Sunday, and that just is an absolute must-watch for everybody. That should be phenomenal. To me, the second and third best quarterback in whatever order you want to put them in the NFL behind Patrick Mahomes will be on the field at the same time. Not at the same time, but in the same game. Well, that would be interesting because I think Josh Allen could probably be successful as like an edge rusher, outside linebacker if he wanted to. But Baltimore at 2-1 is probably the bigger concern for Cincinnati, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that Baltimore beating the Cowboys was huge, not just because of the fact that they won, but in how they won, because Baltimore has had trouble historically, especially with Lamar Jackson, in giving up these big wins or these big leads late and just crumbling down the stretch. And I felt like if they crumbled against the Cowboys, I would be even more concerned with the Ravens and the Bengals, because the Bengals, it kind of feels like, all right, they have some injuries, they'll figure some things out. But the Ravens, I mean, the psyche and the lack of momentum that happens when you give up big lead after big lead is just bad. And so the fact that they had this defensive stand at the end, Lamar looked like Lamar. I feel like Rashad Bateman is really good. He's coming on strong. Same thing, Zay Flowers. I feel like this is a team that is on the rise. They needed that win for their momentum, and that's a team that you don't really want to let get momentum because of the Lamar Jackson factor. I mean, he's so good. He's going to be so hard to stop. And so the more runway you give this team when you're the Bengals, the tougher it's going to be to try to catch up, and you're just digging yourself in a hole before you're even getting started.
Yeah, I still can't figure out what the Ravens were doing in losing at home to the Raiders. There have been some results that have just absolutely baffled me. That one did. Denver going to Tampa and throttling the Buccaneers. That was curious to me. Honestly, Washington winning in Cincinnati was kind of a shock, but watching the Commandos as I did yesterday, I'm like, okay, I see it, Jaden Daniels. And I know in Chicago they're going, well, did we take the wrong quarterback? I am curious. Bryce Young isn't the only first overall pick at that position who has either been benched or is about to be. We are hearing now that Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville might lose his starting job. Is that a complete panic by Doug Peterson? Or, I mean, he hasn't played well, so I get it, but it does seem to me to be a panic decision.
That feels like a panic decision, especially after you paid him in the off season. I mean, that's a lot of money to have sitting on your bench. And I'm not the best at econ and sunk costs and things like that. But, like, at that point, yes, I know it is technically a sunk cost, but, like, I think you have to trust him. You know, how much long-term damage are you doing to him and this team by panic benching him? And granted, the Bills' defense is very injured and did not go into the season as one of the best groups in the league, and it certainly took some hits with some injuries the first couple of weeks. But I think you've got to give him some time to recover from that and bounce back from that. But, you know, I think that this season so far is showing how important the quarterback evaluation is, and not just evaluating it in a vacuum, but who you're able to surround these guys with. Because Jaden Daniels is in a great situation in Washington. He's got a good coordinator with him. He's got a good head coach. He's got guys like Terry McLaurin. He's got the run game with Austin Eckler, though he left with a concussion.
Yeah.
Seems to have a pretty good offensive line. You inserted him into a good situation versus poor Caleb Williams. Yes, he has all these skill players, but it doesn't matter if you can't get the ball out to your skill guys because the offensive line has the pass rush in his lap every play.
Yeah.
I feel like Caleb Williams, this is not an indictment on his personal evaluation. It's an indictment on what the team chose to spend their money on in the offseason. We've known for a long time the Bears do not have a good offensive line. Justin Fields can tell you all about that. And if you don't have a good line, you can't do anything. I don't care how mobile you are. And so you're just asking him to do too much too early, and that's why you're seeing the results you're seeing so far.
Final thing for Brooke Pryor, and we're going to bring it back to Pittsburgh since they took on Russell Wilson. They took on the reclamation project that is Justin Fields. Adam Schefter, colleague of yours at ESPN, keeps saying that the Panthers are going to trade Bryce Young. So will the Steelers buy low on Bryce Young in the offseason? I say that half joking, only because of the Steelers keep taking on everybody's quarterback who failed at their most recent job. But somebody's going to trade for Bryce Young on the cheap, I would imagine.
I would have said a year ago that there was no way the Steelers would be involved with Justin Fields, but the price dropped low enough that it made it feasible, and obviously things worked out the way they worked out. But I think that if Fields ends up working out the way he has so far through 3 games, the Steelers aren't going to be in the market for another reclamation project. Right. They don't need to rehab Bryce Young. I don't remember Tomlin as being infatuated with Bryce Young in his pre-draft process, because even the year that Justin Fields came out, the Steelers didn't need a quarterback, but it was pretty well documented how much Mike Tomlin loved him, and that's where, if you're ever curious who Mike Tomlin wants to pursue in free agency or a trade, just look at his routes and where he goes during the combine days and the pro day workouts and things like that, because he very much flirts out in the open with all the guys he's really interested in. And when they get here in the building, they say, oh, yeah, I remember Mike Tomlin from my pro day. We went out to dinner. He talked to me, whatever it is. That's where his process starts. And I don't remember hearing a lot about Mike Tomlin really liking Bryce Young.
Brooke Pryor, appreciate your time. You're the best. At B.E. Pryor on Twitter. She covers the Steelers for ESPN. And 25 minutes from now, she'll be on your television. So go check out SportsCenter. Brooke, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.